Hello, and welcome back to Holistic Healing with Lori podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about body voltage. Now, if you've been in the holistic space for a little while, then you're probably aware of the detrimental effects of things like 5G, Wi-Fi, and things like that, right? But we sometimes don't think about the electricity that's in our houses and where there might be some hot spots, how our body is being affected by the electricity in our houses. And you might find some very interesting things. There's this thing called a body voltage meter, and we hadn't played with ours for a while. We had done some basic mitigation, right? For example, you really want to be sleeping in something that is in a space that is less than 0.001 volts, right? Let's take a look. I'll give you an example here. And to hook this little guy up, you can get this off of Amazon. I have a preferred brand also that we'll link to in the description. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to plug in there's your grounding prong, and it'll show you in the directions how to do this, but you'll be able to see it. And you want to make sure that it's grounded. That's going to give you a true reading. And then you turn it to this first one, so above there. And then you're going to hold this guy in your hand. Now, I think my screen right now is reversed, but you can see this is 7.5 volts, right? This is way too much. Now, I am sitting in front of my screen. I have a whole bunch of stuff down below that's plugged in, so it makes sense. At the same time, it would be much better if I had, let's say, around 1 volt that I was experiencing here, right? Now, I'm still holding on to this, and I'm holding on to this with the same hand, which isn't as accurate, but I just want to show you what happens when I touch. This is just me touching my computer. Do you see we're now up to 51, 50, actually, sorry, yeah, 52. Again, this is mirrored. And now we're back down to 6. Our computers cause us to transmit a lot of voltage when we touch the computer surface, and some other things as well. Now, what just changed right now, so you'll see that it just hopped up to 9 volts. What happened right now is I just put my feet on the floor. Now, you would usually think that putting your feet on the floor would actually help to ground you. Here's the thing. When you're in your house, a lot of the wiring can sometimes be underneath the floor. And not to worry, we're going to talk about what to do about these things. Now, another fun thing that my honey and I realized recently, because I took this out to play with it again. Again, we've done our own mitigation here in the house to a certain degree. We can do more for sure. But for example, where we were sleeping was up at 7 volts. So we actually turn off the breaker at night now so that we're sleeping in a space that, and I think it's now like 0.3 or so, so still not ideal, but I'm sorry, I think it's 0.1. So it's still not ideal as far as being 0.001, but it's much, much better. And again, that's a very simple thing that you can do, is just turn the breaker switch off at night. Now, there's a super handy thing that you can do, that you can install with your breaker panel. You have to get an electrician to install it. And I think the product itself is about, what, $250, somewhere around there. But you actually install it right next to that breaker panel, and it allows you to control those breakers remotely. I think it's through your phone, ironically, right? Oh, and this is another point, is that this is again, this is not your Wi-Fi. This is not your radiation. It's not your 5G. That needs to be taken care of separately. And we use a different meter to take a look at that. Definitely recommend turning off the breaker switch for your bedroom at night. Also recommend turning your Wi-Fi router off at night. Now that takes care of both some electricity EMFs in addition to, of course, your Wi-Fi EMFs. And we'll talk about Wi-Fi stuff at another time. But this was what we found out last night when we were playing with the body voltage meter. At one point, I was standing on, or I think he was standing on a mat, like a thick workout mat that we have. And the voltage registering on his body was 1.2 or something like that, right? Which is not too bad. It's not bad at all, actually, for of course, again, ideally speaking, we want it to be like 0.1 or something, but not too bad for the house during the day while all the electronics were on, right? And the electricity was on. And then he handed it to me. I was standing on the wood floor, just right next to him, and it bumped up to 3+ volts. We were like, oh, that's weird. So we started like playing around. And then I went, oh, wait, let me try standing on the mat. Because at first we thought it might have to do with him having, because he has a couple of implants that are metal. And so we thought that maybe it had to do with that. No idea, even though it would probably be inverse of what we noticed. Anyway, what we ended up realizing is, I was like, hold on, let me stand on the mat. And sure enough, what we realized is that the floor, there must be wiring underneath the floor. And we have these beautiful real wooden floors. But there is definitely wiring under there. So the thick mat works better than the thinner mat. And we now, because also the corner that my partner sits in is 3.5. And then when I sit down in my spot, it's 2 volts or so. And what we realized is that when he has that mat underneath his feet, when he's sitting down, it halves the voltage that he's getting. So it's interesting because we typically think of feet on the ground as being grounding, right? And of course, if you're outside, then absolutely that is grounding. But if you're in your house, it might not be grounding. It might actually be causing your body to have more volts. So we now play that game. I don't know if you ever played this when you're growing up, but the floor is lava, is hot lava. And so we now play that game when we're downstairs in that particular area. So for us in our house, it's only in the living room for some reason. When you step over into the dining room, which is right there, it drops back down to 1 or below. And then actually the kitchen is actually really good in there. So I do encourage you to get one of these gals or guys, this I'm talking about here, or theys, and use it to figure out what your body voltage is in various different areas of your house. Now, another thing that we ran into specifically with our house is that we have what's called dirty electricity in both of our offices, which we're working on mitigating. But what that means basically is that the electricity, the wiring that's in the walls is letting off a lot of extra electricity, right? For example, in my office, when the breaker is turned on, even if everything is unplugged, it's still a 7 here. And it gets up to the set, like in the middle of the room, and then one other area of the room, it's only, which is actually in front of my closet, is only 2.5 to 3 volts, which is still higher than what we want for our normal everyday existence when we spend a lot of time in an area. But anyway, when you get closer to a wall, it goes up to 7. And then there's one area which bizarrely in here, even without anything plugged in, is like a 10 or 11 in this office that I'm talking about right now. I'm in right now. So we have some work to do to mitigate that for sure. And we talk about how to do that in the HEAL program. But certainly, again, turning off your breakers at night is a great idea. There's also a plug actually that is made that will help to remedy some of the dirty electricity that's coming out of your outlets. So that's another thing that I'll put a link to in there. And then the little trick like what we figured out with our downstairs with our living room and putting those mats down to half the voltage that our bodies are getting. And then for me, I like to tuck my legs up when I'm sitting down a lot of times anyway. So that's just what I do when I'm sitting down or in the living room downstairs. He's not really a tuck his legs under himself kind of person. So he uses that mat still. So there are some other things that you can do. Another thing to take a look at is the metal in your room, right? If you're getting high readings, even when everything's unplugged, and maybe even when you have your breaker turned off, then take a look at what's in that room with you. So we especially want to be looking at your bedroom. There was one client that I had who had a whole bunch of metal stuff stored underneath her bed. And so we were like, oh, let's take a look at that. And the thing is, y'all, I think this was one of the things that was the hardest for me to get my brain around. And I'm not sure why, because I totally believe in energetic frequencies, but it took me a while back in the day to get my head around this. I think the main thing that turned it around for me was when I was working with a client, and this was even before the HEAL program, and we had looked at just about everything. And then for some reason, I was like, hold on, have you checked the voltage in where you're sleeping? And it turned out that it was at like a 12 or something like that. I can't remember why. Sleep number beds are notoriously horrible for voltage. And sure enough, she turned off her breaker every night for a week. And even, I think it was only like 2 days into it or something, she ended up releasing a whole bunch of gallstones. And similar thing has happened with another client. Again, this was before the HEAL program, but with another client who did a similar thing and started just releasing a whole bunch of parasites. So we don't want to discount this. And yes, it does affect some people more than others, but still, as you are healing, as you're addressing these underlying root causes, we want to be supporting the body as much as possible, not giving it more things to deal with, like voltage that's just kind of frying things and making it have to work even harder. So I hope that's super helpful for you. Again, take some time. And, if your honey or whomever you're living with is having trouble getting on board, have them do this. Have them do this thing of holding it and standing in front of different places. And again, you'll see it's back at a 9 right now. I have my foot on our floor. Now I just took my foot off of the floor and we're back down at a 6. Now I'm touching the computer and we're up at a 45. So have them do this, and this will help them hopefully to on board with you. Or maybe they're super interested in this stuff too. Yeah. So have fun with that. Please share this. And this is important for everybody, not just people, not just if you have chronic symptoms or chronic illness or ME/CFS or fibromyalgia or whatever, though it's even more important then. But this is for anybody and everybody's health. So please do share, hit like, subscribe, download, all those good things, and I'll see you on the next Holistic Healing with Lori podcast episode.